today's guest joins us at a time of great tumult on Russia's borders. While the whole world watches Russian troops gather on the frontier with Ukraine, another crisis has been brewing in Central Asia, in the beacon of stability that we all know as Kazakhstan, where protests in reaction to a hike in prices of LPG devolved into armed unrest, the likes of which nobody expected and triggered an intervention by the Russian-led CSTO. To answer some of the more pertinent questions around what this crisis means for the rest of the world, and in India in particular, joining us today, and it is a great pleasure to introduce him, is Mr. Temur Umarov, who is with the Moscow Center of the Carnegie Endowment. He is an alumnus of the Central Asian Futures Program, also with the Carnegie Endowment. And he also happens to be a native of Uzbekistan, and therefore no stranger to Central Asia whatsoever. Temur, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Temur, the question that's on everybody's mind, and this is quite evident from all the competing theories that are out there, what would you attribute the unrest to, particularly when it took sort of an armed swing and it almost looked like an armed insurrection?
Yeah, that's totally true. As we've actually discussed earlier, nobody expected this to happen, this crisis. Everybody was, thinking that something like this could happen in other parts of Central Asia, like in Kyrgyzstan. Even last year, already 2020, the coup has happened, and it's not the first time Kyrgyzstan faces things like that. But in Kazakhstan, this was a surprise. Kazakhstan has been, for the last 30 years of independence, the most stable country in Central Asia, and really no one saw this coming. Actually, the protest itself was not a surprise. We've seen many protests, especially after the first president, how he's called right now in Kazakhstan, father of nation, Nursultan Nazarbayev, when he started publicly his transition of power in 2019. After that, we've seen a lot of protests that were very political across Kazakhstan in many cities, especially in Almaty, that was booming this time. So the protest itself was not a surprise. What really surprised everyone, and experts and people on the ground as well, is how quickly the protest radicalized, and we saw so many destructions, attacks, gunfires on the street of Almaty, which was unbelievable. And here is why many people think that the fact that the protest radicalized so fast, and what happened afterwards, political reforms that were announced by Mr. Tokayev, the other different signs of, intra-elite conflict, leads us to thinking that it wasn't just a protest, that this protest was used by some part of political elites that were already losing their power for the last 2 years, when the transition of power started, and used this as an opportunity to shake the system, to show to the first president that his plan is not working, that he should maybe rethink, reshuffle, make Tokayev less powerful, because what we've been witnessing since 2019 is that the transition of power was slowly happening, and Nazarbayev, 1 after 1, gave his positions to his successor, to Tokayev. But there are people in political elites of Kazakhstan who are not happy with that, and this crisis, by many experts. Of course, I'm not saying that this is 100%, true, and I have real evidence of that. Maybe we will not know what really happened, never. But to what I see, according to information from the open sources and point of view of my colleagues, this was a protest that was used in intra-elite conflict.
So, like you said, it's not the protests themselves that were surprising per se, but the devolution to armed violence, and not just any armed violence, it was rather organized, and there was an air of precision to it. Now, this leads, opens the door to a lot of speculation. And perhaps this has also been helped by some comments President Tokayev has been making. There is an insinuation that some of these elements were in fact foreign jihadists, which, begets the question, is there any connection to what happened earlier this year in Afghanistan? What do you think?
This is, a very good excuse. It sounds like a very good excuse when something like this happens. And actually, this is not the first time countries claim that terrorists or radicalists, or name them, are to blame for internal crisis. What we saw in Kazakhstan, though, it is a very domestic issue, and I think that the point of view of the government, the official version of what happened, focuses around terrorists and international, attempts to destroy Kazakhstan. I think it's just an excuse to, first of all, tough and very, radical attempts of the government to stop the violence. We know that there might be hundreds of people killed. We don't know the official number yet. The government didn't publish it, but this is not tens of people. This is hundreds. And terrorist is a good excuse for Tokayev to say this is why we called Russian troops. CSTO was called by Kazakhstan to help secure and stabilize situation. And for people in Kazakhstan, this is not a popular thing to do. This is, this might have been a reason for people to go to the streets one more time because of, this just damages the reputation of independence of Kazakhstan. That is why it is a very unpopular thing to do. And for Tokayev to make people believe that the situation was very, very risky, the only way out is to claim that this risk is coming from terrorists who are, very, very aggressive and stuff like that.
Yeah, and now in the same vein, President Tokayev has also claimed to have weathered an attempted coup, and has certainly taken steps to remove any elements associated with Nur Sultan Nazarbayev, as you've said, I believe, removed him from his position as a part of the National Security Council, and
Yeah.
Including his son-in-law, Karim Masalov, from the National Security Committee, who I believe is either a Tajik or an Uyghur, I'm not sure. And that had something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
What can we expect from a post-Nazarbayev Kazakhstan in the truest sense? Do you see any sort of seismic shifts as far as trajectories in domestic and foreign policy go?
First of all, Karim Masimov is not Nazarbayev's son-in-law. He is a long-term ally and a very, a person whom Nazarbayev trusted a lot. He was appointed to a position of head of security agency that is inherited KGB from Soviet Union, and Masimov's aim, Masimov's goal was to make sure that transition of power happens gradually and without any unprecedented and unexpected crisis. And it's also very important that Masimov was not a part of a family. Although he was very close to Nazarbayev, but it's not a relative to him. And actually, because of his Uyghur ethnicity, he's not very popular among people in Kazakhstan. We know how Kazakhstan for the last several years has been protesting against China, and Masimov here was very controversial figure on the political scene, and political elites in Kazakhstan also did not trust Masimov because he was not seen as kind of one of us. Tokayev actually managed to turn the attempt to make him less powerful, attempt to maybe even take him down. He managed to turn it upside down, and the theory that is going on right now among expert community is that what happened in Almaty has something to do with Nazarbayev's family, who, in case of real transition and after Nazarbayev's death, would suffer a lot, because their positions in Kazakhstan's power is not institutionalized, and the only thing that keeps them powerful is their connection to Nazarbayev. But without Nazarbayev, this doesn't work. When Nazarbayev is not playing any role in Kazakhstan, they will disappear. So because of that, there was conflict going on, but it didn't end up like the one that we've seen in 2022. Tokayev used this as an opportunity to mute Nazarbayev from active political scene, because it was, a number one claim of protesters everywhere in Kazakhstan, in every city. It all started by socioeconomic reasons, but after that it escalated to political aims, and people were saying that Nazarbayev should go. For Tokayev to stabilize situation on the one hand, and on the other hand to secure his own positions, it was maybe the only way out to take down Nazarbayev and to step in as a head of Security Council, and after that start a reshuffle in the government to take down the people who were closely associated with Nazarbayev, and even at the very beginning of after January 5th and 6th, we see different news about Nazarbayev's nephew, who was also in a very important player in security agency, Samat Abish. There were news that he was replaced, and after that there were news that he was arrested, but these news disappeared very quickly, and the media that published this news actually apologized and said that it's fake. And now we're getting the news that he's continuing working at security agency, but he's on a leave. He's taking a rest. Very strange, because why would a very important security agency manager take a leave during the crisis in Kazakhstan? So, but it's important that he was not arrested. And right now, people think that Kazakhstan is in the middle of negotiation between previous elites and coming elites, between Nazarbayev and Tokayev, that they decided that Masimov could be a scapegoat, and everything could be blamed on him, and this would be a consensus, because yes, he is a very important ally of Nazarbayev, but still he's not too close to Nazarbayev, and he can sacrifice.
Basically, that's the truth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and definitely all of this leads to Nazarbayev's influence going down with upcoming years.
So now this actually brings us in the wake of the seismic shift. And I'm actually quoting an article that you drafted earlier. When it comes to foreign policy in the neighborhood, Kazakhstan had a unique diplomatic balancing act, particularly when it came to dealing with the US, Russia, and China. And I think the examples of Russia and China particularly bear recall, because they're so fascinating. You talked about the reaction to Crimea, as well as the way they were dealing with the Uyghur crisis in China, when they're not openly opposing what is going on, but still letting refugees in, protests were allowed to go on, etc. Given the fact that the Russian-led CSTO was required to restore order, has Kazakhstan been ushered into the Russian fold for the moment? I mean, has this balancing act been upset irrevocably for a while? What do you think is going to happen down the line?
Yeah, it seems like right now Tokayev, even though he has become very powerful, he owes his position to Moscow, because even if it was a intra-elite conflict, Moscow showed its support, and at the moment Russian troops stepped on Kazakhstan ground, the foreign policy of Kazakhstan should have been changed, and this is sounds very logical, but on the other hand, we should also understand how relations between Russia and Kazakhstan are working, and very importantly in economic terms. Kazakhstan's economy is, more or less. Kazakhstan economy is very dependent on oil exports. And here, if we look at Russia, Russia cannot, provide many things to Kazakhstan in terms of economics, because their economic structures are not do not complete each other. They're even rivals in this term. So Russia doesn't have many things to give to Kazakhstan in this term. And for Russia, it's important to keep economically Kazakhstan tied to many different countries in terms of investment and trade. Because Russia doesn't want to see Kazakhstan in economic crisis, because this will lead to many bad consequences for Russia's own economy. And I think that even though Russia will be more putting more pressure on Kazakhstan in terms of cooperating with the West, cooperating with NATO countries, because this is very important for Russia's interests at all, in foreign policy, with many countries. But when it comes to economy, Russia will be pragmatic and will try not to push Kazakhstan in its own orbit. That is why I think Kazakhstan, when we talk about economy, will continue to be this multivectoral country that hosts companies from many different places, from the West to China. But when it comes to other parts of foreign policy, especially when it comes to cooperating on democratization, cooperating on human rights, I think Moscow will be pushing Kazakhstan closer to itself. It will try to change this narrative around reforms, especially political reforms. I will not be surprised if Kazakhstan will, copy or the laws in Kazakhstan will be influenced by Russian examples. For example, when it comes to operation of NGOs in the country, or operations of different activists in Kazakhstan, or how media works. I think here we will see Russia's influence much more than we used to. Also, when we talk about these issues, many people ask about China and how China is looking at what is happening in Central Asia. And my take here is that the level of competition, the level of rivalry between China and Russia in Central Asia is a little bit overestimated, but the level of cooperation is underestimated. We want to see that Central Asia will become, not we, but many people actually. I'm not the one. I try to be objective. Many people want to see Central Asia to become this region where Moscow and Beijing fights. And because of this wishful thinking, they forget that these countries actually have many things where they cooperate in the region. Just take a look at Tajikistan, where we already see the news of second paramilitary base of China. And Russia is okay with that. Of course, everyone understands that China's might in security terms cannot be compared to Russia's power in this term. But this is a changing trend, and this is something that will influence relations in long term. But when we talk about short term relations, I don't think that China will, anyhow try to minimize Russia's influence in Central Asia, especially in security, where it doesn't have actually real instruments to replace Russia for now. So when Kazakhstan crisis happened, China, the only thing that China wanted out of this crisis is the situation to get stabilized as fast as possible, so that this crisis does not, become a additional risk factor for destabilization in Xinjiang, which is very important for China, especially this year, when this year is very important for Chinese political on the Chinese political calendar. So yeah, for China saw Russia's troops in Kazakhstan as a source of stabilization, and it didn't saw it as a threat to its interests, in my view.
So actually, to you off that point and come to India for a second. So India and Kazakhstan have been cooperating tremendously since at least 2009. There was a strategic partnership that was signed. There have been several joint military exercises, as well as a treaty dealing with military technology. And there's apparently also Kazakh troops serving with an Indian battalion in Lebanon under the auspices of the UN peacekeeping forces. Some analysts in India would seem to think that current events would in some way be favorable to the Indo-Kazakh relationship, particularly if it seems as if China has somehow lost ground over there. In your opinion, would current events impact India-Kazakhstan relations at all, or do you think it will be status quo? Do bear in mind that President Tokayev might actually be attending our Republic Day on January 26th, along with the heads of all the other Central Asian republics. So this is clearly a relationship that was actually on an upswing, and we'd like to know how these events might inform that.
Yes, when we talk about this crisis, I think it will definitely be a milestone in domestic politics, but in foreign, when it comes to Kazakhstan's foreign relations, it will not change much. Of course, as I've said, Russia's influence in this multivectoral pie will be bigger now, but at the same time, it means that the need of Kazakhstan to diversify its ties with many other countries will be, much more important than it used to be any time during Kazakhstan's independence. So for Kazakhstan right now, it will be very important to, especially taking how Russia will be, putting pressure on different aspects of Kazakhstan's life. For Kazakhstan, it will be very important to secure and develop its relations with other countries, and especially with India, which is a great power in Eurasia and very important player when it comes to regional and world politics in these terms. So there are many aspects of cooperation that can be developed. We cannot say right now that Kazakhstan-Indian relations reached a certain peak. The peak is far away, and there can be done many things to develop trade with India, to cooperate on technological and pharmacy sectors, which is very important for Kazakhstan, since it economically wants to shift from just resource exporting oriented economy to a more technological, to more to something else except for just oil exports. And here I think that India looks like a great partner that can help Kazakhstan not only diversify its foreign ties, but also help overcome its domestic issues in economic terms.
Right. I think that's all the time we have today. Temur, on behalf of Global Order, thank you very much for your time. That was most insightful.
Thank you for having me.